Hello again, everybody. This video is going to continue looking at issues within the race unit. To get started, first we'll talk about minorities. We'll then go and talk about some of the theoretical perspectives that are connected to race. So what you're looking at here is an infographic that shows population trends by racial category across several decades. And if you look at the chart here, at this graph, it'll show you that around 2045, for the first time in United States history, whites will collectively be less of the population than all non-whites combined. At this point, do whites become a minority group? Well, the answer to this question is no. No matter how small this portion of the graph, which represent whites in America, no matter how small that gets, that alone will not determine whether or not whites are a minority group. To understand why, let's look at what a minority group is. A minority group is any group that has a distinct identity and, importantly, is subordinated or has reduced status. So again, even if we saw in this graphic here, even if this blue section shrunk down to, say, 10%, unless there was also subordination happening to that group, they would not be a minority group. Okay? Doesn't matter how big these sections get, which represent blacks, Asians, Hispanics, and all other racial categories. Doesn't matter how big these get. Because in the United States, all of these groups are subordinated groups, meaning they have less status, less opportunity, less political power, less pay, etc. Okay, so in order for a group to be a minority, again, it needs a distinct identity and has to be subordinated. Excuse me. Continuing on, let's look at some of the theories that are connected to race. So the first one we'll look at is scapegoat theory. Scapegoat theory is used to understand racial interactions within a population. When we look at this as applied to the United States, this is often when economically disadvantaged people blame others who are below them on the socioeconomic scale. They blame them for the reason of their own economic conditions. So in this case, it's often represented in popular media. Here you have an example of that from the cartoon South Park, with the working class white male targeting demographic groups that exist below working class white males on the socioeconomic scale for the economic problems that working class white males face. If you remember, this was weaponized quite successfully in the 2016 election that resulted in the election of former President Trump. So in this case, it was Mexicans or people south of our border are coming to the United States to take our jobs away. Prior to that, it was black people are going to be taking our jobs away. Prior to that, it was women are going to be taking our jobs away. Prior to that, it was Irish and Italian immigrants are going to take our jobs away. Right? You can see scapegoat theory and that kind of behavior represented across generations. And the demographic groups might change, but the message is the same, that when a factory in Detroit closes down and it reopens in Juarez, Mexico, that it was the Mexicans that took their jobs away, right? This is the use of scapegoat theory. Of course, if you apply some critical thought to that, you will quickly come to understand that that's not the case. The people in Juarez, Mexico didn't take a job from anybody. Right? They were offered a job when a new factory opened. The person or people responsible for the loss of the job would be the decision makers at the automaker that decided to close down the plant and reopen it somewhere else so that they could add to their profit margin. So scapegoat theory is often something that is used and encouraged by the elites in our society because it takes the focus off of what those elite and powerful and rich groups are doing, and instead redirects the attention to somewhere else. So if I'm the manager, or if I'm the owner of that car company and I close down a factory in Detroit, I reopen it in Juarez, Mexico, and all the workers in that factory blame the workers in Juarez, well, that's great for me, right? Like, I got to do this thing. I save 5 cents per part, and I don't even get blamed for it, right? They're blaming those suckers down in Mexico, those people who are essentially just like them, who are trying to get a job to support their family also. So then I'm free to do it again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again, okay? This idea and this concept and this use of power and power disparity and redirecting blame also connects to some of the other theories that are relevant for our race unit, particularly conflict theory. Now, conflict theory, again, is about inequality. So when we're talking about conflict theory within race, we're talking about race conflict theory and inequality between the different races and racial groups in our society. Now, conflict theory says that race, again, as we discussed in the previous video, is a socially constructed concept. And under conflict theory, that is a tool. Race is a tool that is used by powerful, wealthy, well-connected people to divide the working class. If people think about themselves as white worker, black worker, Mexican worker, Asian worker, they're not thinking about themselves simply as workers, right? They are dividing themselves into smaller and smaller groups. And while they are fighting amongst themselves, blaming each other for their own economic hardships, the people at the top keep collecting more and more and more and more of the wealth. Okay? So there's this conflict theory's view on race, and that it is a tool used by the powerful to divide. A tool to divide people who should otherwise be allies. I mean, whether it's the white working class guy, the black working class woman, the Asian or Hispanic working class man or woman, they have far more in common with each other than what differentiates them, right? They're all working a job. They're all trying to keep a roof over their head and put food on the table and ensure a future for their kids, right? They have a lot in common with one another. But if they don't see that, and instead are focusing on the difference of race as it's perpetuated again and again and again, then they are less likely to ally with each other in order to challenge the system that puts them in this condition where they're struggling for each paycheck. Okay? So from conflict theory, again, race is a tool used by powerful people to divide up people who otherwise should be allies. Okay? So I was going to keep this video brief. Again, we looked at minorities, what makes a minority, what does minority mean? Again, it has a distinct identity and is subordinated. Scapegoat theory, what that means, and how conflict theory is connected to race. Okay? I'd like to hear your comments or questions or feedback. Leave that in the section below, and I'll see you next time.